Thanks everybody for being here. I see a couple familiar names. I see Kathy Borgone. Hi, I feel like you've had your students submit writing to the change agent. Don't know if I've seen your name in my inbox recently though. Maybe not. Okay, maybe I can rope you back in with this. Anybody else here know me from anything that, and I'm scrolling through the screen to see other names. Well, feel free to make yourself known in the chat if we've been in touch. And also, Kathy, later on when we talk about writing for the change agent, if you feel like sharing anything, if anything comes to mind that you'd like to share with your colleagues here, I'll call on you.
Gladly.
Okay, great. All right, well, let me share my screen. So Cynthia, I'm the editor of the change agent. I've been doing that now for 16, 17 years. And it's just been a great experience because I get to work with students and their writing, and I get to get all these submissions in from all over the country, compile their stories into a series of issues of the change agent on a certain theme, and then create activities that help teachers teach with this resource. And so the good news about it is you're teaching with student writing. So students are learning basic skills by reading something written by their peers, which has a kind of inherent value and kind of relatability to it. And then there's these standards aligned activities that you can teach with. And our current series is on transferable skills. So I'm going to share some ideas with you today about, first of all, what are transferable skills? How can you teach about them in a way that also helps you teach English? And also help prepare your students for employment. I want to give a little shout out to Jen Denton from Essential Education, because she and I have been presenting on this topic quite a bit. So a lot of the ideas come from her. So I'm going to be talking a lot about the change agent today. And I want to let you know that thanks to the generosity of Eric and NJALL, you guys call it that, NJALL? For short.
I do, but everybody else calls it NJALL. I can't.
NJALL. Okay.
NJALL, but
right. I'm going to go with the majority on this one, Eric.
Yeah, I know.
Has a bulk subscription to this magazine and to all of our resources. This includes such a wealth of content in PDF format, content in audio. Students can listen to articles being read out loud to them. There's so much in here. We were talking about Indigenous people's food and recipes. And I just put in the chat, the change agent has a whole issue on Indigenous peoples and a whole issue on food. So practically any topic you name, the change agent has covered it. You can scroll through our back issues and see and find something that aligns with a topic that you're teaching about. I can almost guarantee you. So if you're sitting at computers right now, which I imagine most of you are because you're on Zoom, if you're on your phone, maybe it's harder, but you can probably still do it on your phone. Could you just go to this link here? And Eric, if you wouldn't mind popping it into the chat, then it will be a hot link and people can just click on it.
Yep, I dropped it in already.
Great. So click on that link, folks. And in the upper right-hand corner, you should see an opportunity to write in your username and password. So in the interest of making it easy for everybody, we just made the same username and password. NJALL and NJALL. I noticed, I tested it out myself a little bit, and I noticed that the username isn't actually case sensitive. At least I don't think it is, according to my little test that I ran. But the password actually is case sensitive. So I thought it best to maybe just make them both all uppercase for ease of remembering them. And also, you want to be sharing this with all your students because you want them to be able to independently go in and find the audio and listen to the audio on their own. And so just sharing this username and password with them is a really good idea, and to make it as simple as possible was our goal. So can people give me a little thumbs up or just put something in the chat? And Eric, let me know what people are saying. Is it work? Are you in? Did you encounter a problem trying to log in? Let me know if you're in or not.
Some people yes, some people no.
Okay, so the no's, I wonder could you say
Getting more ins than, I only got one no.
One no. Okay.
So we'll figure that one out.
Yeah, we're going to troubleshoot this. We don't have time, during this 1 hour to do a lot of troubleshooting, but I'm so happy to get an email from you and help you figure this out. So, because I really want everybody to be in this resource. I want you to save the username and password so that you don't even have to remember NJALL like that. You can just put it out of your mind, just save it and then log in. And like I said, support your students and all your colleagues. This is now a free-for-all. Everybody gets to log in and use this as much as you want. You can print out multiple copies of whole issues if you want. You can just use it to your heart's content. And this is good for 1 year. So great. Well, keep me posted, Eric, if there's anything in the chat that I should respond to. But I hope a lot of you are in. During the course of this webinar, I'm going to ask you to click on links that would be helpful if you were logged in. So that's why I hope people would be able to get themselves logged in. All right, so I mentioned that, the way we work now is we put out a series of 3 issues on a topic, and this current series is on transferable skills. And you can see that there's 3 titles. We take action, we adapt and manage, and we use our minds. And I just got to say, there are wonderful stories in here by learners telling how they have used their kind of soft skills, you might say, leadership, emotional intelligence, teamwork, problem solving, to get along in their work life, their community life, and their family life, and at school. And so we're lifting up these stories as a way to hold up a mirror for other students, because we think that adult ed students are very rich in transferable skills. They have a lot of practice in these skills in all areas of life, but they might not necessarily have a name for some of these skills, and if we hold up a mirror to them so they can see the skill and name it, then it's actually, a lot of things they've done in life can go on their resume and it can help them get work. So my goals for this hour are to help you understand the importance of students being able to identify and amplify their transferable skills. I want you to be able to identify and use resources to help students discover and celebrate those skills. And I want to leave you with access to adaptable materials to share with students. So you could actually walk out of this webinar with, ready to use materials. So let's just back up a little bit. What are transferable skills? Well, the best way to think of them as they're portable. They can be used in a variety of roles and occupations. So there are things like life skills. They're abundant in a non-traditional classroom. And I like to say that that one thing I love about this teaching about transferable skills, it is very strengths-based. A lot of times our students come to us with maybe certain deficits, right? Like they want to be better in math, they want to be able to read better, they want to be able to speak English better. They're asking for help to address those deficits, and that's part of our job. But now we have this opportunity to actually lift up all these strengths that our students walk into the classroom with, and lift those up and help people identify them and name them. So why don't we say soft skills? I mean, sometimes you might have heard the term soft skills, but I'm drawing from a world education project called the Personal Workplace and Success Skills Library, and I have the link to it there. So when you get a copy of these slides, you can click on that link and go explore that library. But they talk about how the term soft skills kind of trivializes some of these skills that really involve a lot of rigor and depth. And we don't want to reduce these skills to just something like, workplace punctuality and etiquette. These are deep skills that are learned over a lifetime. Also, just a note about equity. Sometimes, the perceived lack of soft skills can be used against people of color. It can be, people on the job might be fighting for something to be improved at the workplace, and that could be called, lacking certain soft skills, like being able to work as a team or something like that. And so we don't want to use them in that regard either. We want some people might be more willing to speak up. And in fact, that is a good skill to have. But you have to balance, the leadership and the speaking up skill with the other skills that are required to be able to succeed at work. Okay, so let's, this is a funny slide where we just look at what moms, or just, let's just say parents, have a lot of experience doing these jobs. I won't read all these things out loud, but you can see a lot of work that a mom or a parent does. And I bet anybody on here who either is a parent or has known a parent can relate to this list. It's a big job being a parent. And salary.com did a survey of 19,000 moms apparently, and tracked, their labor and assigned real-time market prices to the jobs that they do. And they said that the result would be that moms should be paid something like $184,000 a year. So just to say that a lot of our students are parents, or they have played leadership roles in their family such that they have a lot of transferable skills that they may not have a name for. And so we wanted to lift that up by creating a packet of stories by students who are parents, where they are discussing some of the skills that they use as parents. So this is a packet which Eric is going to put the link in the chat, and I'm going to ask people to click on the link and open this packet. And I have it open on my screen too. So if for some reason you're unable to see it, I can just scroll through it myself. But it includes 4 student written stories and 2 practical worksheets. So let me see if people can open that.
Looks like some of the folks who couldn't before had solved it by going to different browsers. So
Okay.
that's you. Maybe try different browsers or doing it that way. We're getting some thumbs up, so I think people are able to access it.
Great. So just take a minute and scroll through and look at the stories here. Maybe just read the titles and look at the pictures and skim through. So let me stop sharing for a second and just ask, what did you notice there? What stories stood out to you? You can put something in the chat, or I would invite you to just unmute. We're a large group, but let's see if we can handle it. If you want, you
Yeah,
can
if you raise your hand, we can coordinate that, but otherwise, yeah, you can use the chat.
So what do you notice about the stories? And I know I didn't give you really a chance to read them, but I'm hoping you got a vague sense of the themes.
Not having gotten a chance to read the entirety of it, but the story about a child with autism, I know I have now and have had many students with children with autism. It seems to become quite common.
Yeah.
That would certainly be of interest.
Yeah, and the way that she has to figure out how to be a leader for her son. Like she has to troubleshoot his experience in public education and find the resources for him. And it's not easy. English isn't her first language. She's an immigrant. She's not familiar with autism. She doesn't, but she has to figure it out. So even if your kid doesn't have autism per se, your kid might have needed your leadership in some other way to help solve a problem. I love that story. And that same author wrote about defending her son against racism. Did you see that one in there? It's a beautiful, amazing story of this, her kind of, I want to call it micro leadership. Like it's just on this one for her one, but like it's also macro leadership. I mean, she is getting there and naming it and getting the principal involved and figuring out a way. I think what she does is she volunteers in her kid's school to be able to understand what's going on there. That's incredible. when you think about it. I see lots of comments in the chat. Somebody says, mom with kids with tablets and problems with connectivity access. Yes, yes, that mom emerged not only helping get her own kids tablets, but then she said, oh my gosh, my community, other people in my community probably aren't figuring this out. I should help them. And she kind of just nominates herself as a community leader and supports other Latino families to figure out how to apply for free tablets from the city of New York. Amazing story. And then Christine says, I like the one told with drawings. Yeah. If you have beginning learners, you know, having those drawings can help support, you know, the text. Also, if you have beginning learners, maybe some of these texts look too hard. I encourage you though, just don't totally back away from it. Maybe teach a paragraph or two, or pick a couple of sentences to teach. And, you know, if you have a lot of different multi-level classroom, which all of us in adult ed always have, right? You know, if you can teach a few sentences to the beginners and then the more intermediate might be able to take on a few more, but the scaffolding in this situation would be just interest. There's interest in the story, kind of fascination with seeing a peer, right? You know, being published in a national magazine. So Kathy says, gives the students a chance to bare their souls on how topics relate to them. Yes, you're opening up all this communication in your classroom, right? By telling this powerful story by a learner. Yeah, I see a lot of great comments here. Thank you, everybody. All moms are problem solvers. Yeah, but do you think that they have names for those skills? Like, do you think they call it critical and creative thinking? I mean, they might not have that term down, but you could work with a student, like that student who navigated systems to get support for her autistic son. There's a way you could use language to describe that could go on a resume. Do you agree? And it wouldn't be, I was a good mom, or I helped my son. That's not it. It would be, you know, navigated, you know, public school bureaucracy in order to, I don't know what it would be exactly, but you see what I'm saying? Helping students kind of land there. But the first step is just getting them to see it in themselves. And my thinking is, if they see it in other students and can name it in the, you know, these pieces that they're reading, that'll help them name it in themselves. Okay. So also, can you just scroll to the end, or actually let me share my screen and I'll just show it to you. See this little worksheet? You know, this is a way that you could keep working with students. You know, you could fill in this chart and use examples from your own life. It references an article by Nushat Jahan. I mean, that's not relevant here. You can still just use this chart. But, you know, what are some things you do for your family? And then what are some of the skills connected with that activity? So the practice here again is just naming what you do and then naming the skills. And also we're using a graphic organizer. We're taking notes. This is a great writing opportunity because, you know, the standards always want us to write for different purposes. So certainly being able to take notes is one purpose for writing. And then based on these notes, you could develop sentences, you could develop paragraphs, you could develop language for a resume, lots of different writing purposes. So there's this little worksheet, which you could modify and, you know, kind of use in a way that makes sense for you. And there's also this worksheet, which is just an opportunity to check things off. And there's a lot of things on this list, but I think it's just to get the juices flowing here, you know, get people thinking about all the things that they've done. And so this checklist is another way to get people thinking. Okay, so I want you to have that packet so you might consider, you know, bringing that into the classroom. Then you also have those worksheets you can use, and then each article has activities related to it. So for example, that parenting, that first article, Suddenly We Are Teachers, it has this activity. It says the third one on the list is note that, let's see, Fabiola says that parenting 3 kids at home in remote school was a full-time job. Write a job description for someone in this role. Draw from her experience and your own, if you like. So this is another writing task. Write a job description. What do you have to be able to do? What skills do you need to be able to play this role that Fabiola describes in this article? And now we're also doing a standards aligned activity, which is we're going back to the text and drawing evidence from the text. So we're really meeting a lot of basic skills needs. We're meeting a lot of academic needs. We're teaching according to the standards, and we're lifting up these transferable skills. We're practicing a lot of reading skills, and we're using a strengths-based perspective. Like we're helping students see the ways that they have these strengths too. So it's a lot of win, 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 and win. So that's one packet, and there's another packet here, which let me check the time. I'm not going to take the time to actually look at this packet right now, but Eric, if you don't mind dropping the link for this one in the chat, I just encourage you, if you want to click on it and open it, so you'll have it open for later, that would be fine. But I want to just mention that this is a packet where I went back into old change agents and I picked out articles where people had volunteered. And they talked about their volunteer work. I actually think we have a New Jersey student in this. Actually, now that I've said that, I want to check and see. Yeah. Is this student a New Jersey student? Yes. She was in the New Brunswick Public Schools.
She was mine,
Lucy
Cynthia. Yeah.
Mendoza Cruz. Does anybody know her?
Yes.
Yeah. Did that article come from you, Kathy?
Yeah, it did. Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So, this packet includes stories like hers of volunteering, and it also includes, the couple of pieces that I wanted to highlight include somebody who is an ex-offender, somebody with a criminal record, who talks about how he used volunteering as a pathway to a career, because people don't always feel inclined to hire somebody with a criminal record. But if you build up your volunteer, experience, then you can get references, and people can see how you have turned a corner. So that's what that article's about. There's also a story in here by a non-citizen who talks about how he engages in civics. And this seems really important to me during an election year. An election year isn't not just for people who can vote. Non-citizens can be very engaged in supporting community members to register to vote, helping people get to the polls, helping people understand the issues, talking to people at your place of worship, at your workplace, at your school. Just because you yourself can't vote doesn't mean you can't play a very active role in election season. So this is a great story of basically he doesn't call himself a volunteer. It's just, all the things that people do in life that contribute to civic participation and contribute to their community, but they don't call it that. So I collected these articles here because I wanted, again, for students to have a chance to see how other people are doing it so that they can name it for themselves. So that's another packet. And, just go check out both of those packets in your I was about to say leisure, but I don't think that term works too well for people in adult. But check them out when you have time. And it would be great if you could, if you decide to use those in the classroom, please let me know how it goes. I'd love to hear. So why does it matter to teach about transferable skills? Well, I've made a bunch of reasons already, but here's a few more. So of displaced workers, apparently almost 21 million can't identify their transferable skills with a high degree of confidence. So they just don't know what they are. They can't name them. 21 million aren't sure how to include transferable skills on their resume. So they might be able to name them, but they just don't know where does this go on my resume? And 34% can't provide good examples of how their skills would apply to another job. So that's another really important thing. You might have a student who's worked for the past 10 years as a checkout clerk at CVS, and they really want to get into the healthcare field. Well, what they have done during those years in customer service would transfer to healthcare? Quite a bit, right? working with working with people, solving problems, staying patient and calm when there's lots of urgency around you. Yeah, so helping your students, and they might feel a sense of discouragement, like, oh, how can I ever get into healthcare? All I've ever done is work at CVS. No, 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 let's talk about that. Let's talk about all the things you've done there that could transfer. So, as I've already said, the other thing is that that adult learners have a lot of these skills. So it's great. We get to, it's kind of an easy, it's low-hanging fruit. We get to just help students name them. So if you don't mind putting the link to this Google Doc in the chat, Eric, I want to let you know, I have two ways to work with this content. One is a fillable PDF, but let's ignore that for now. You'll get the link to it. You can use that if you want. Let's go with this Google Doc approach. And he's going to put the link. The Google Doc looks like this, and you should all be able to open it, and it's viewable to anybody who has the link. So viewable means you cannot manipulate it in any way. Unless, does anybody have an idea what you could do if you want to manipulate it? What could you do?
Save a copy.
Save a copy. Thank you. Is that Christian Barcelos? Yes. If you have a Google account, you can just go up here to make a copy. And bingo, it's just a copy. And it says on it, it says copy of worksheet. And if I make a copy right now, that I own it. I am the owner of that Google Doc. And I can edit it. I can share it with my students. I can adapt it. I can just do whatever I want to it. Right? Or if I don't have a Google account, I can go up to File and I can download it into the software that I use. Okay. So now you have it in Microsoft Word, let's say. And again, you own it. And this is me. I am just trying to, I don't feel ownership about these things. I'm trying to create worksheets and learning tools that then work for you, and you can make them work for you by adapting them for your learners. So the way I did this myself, thinking, trying to just kind of do the best I could, was I named the skill, the transferable skill, and there's 10 of them here. And I get them from that personal workplace and success skills library that I mentioned before. And here's the link to that library. But if you Google transferable skills, you get all kinds of different ways of looking at it. Sometimes there's 14 top transferable skills. Sometimes there's 8, sometimes there's 20. The personal workplace and success skills library has named 10, and I am using those 10. It's a little bit arbitrary. They're a little bit overlappy. It's not perfect, but it's a way to talk about the skills. So I've got the skill listed here. I also put which issue of the change agent has stories related to that skill. Then I put an example of a skill. I just made it up. If you don't like it, you could make up a different one. Or if you feel like, oh, my students would not resonate with this, you could just make your own. And then there's space here for the student to write about a time in her life when she's used that skill. Now, again, so if you print this out, they can just use it as a hard copy and write in the space provided. But you could also think of it as a digital literacy opportunity, and you could have them work in Google Docs. And now it's, the space can expand if they write a lot. You could have 2 people collaborate on a document. Uh-oh, now we're collaborating on a Google Doc. Very important digital skill. I use this in my life all the time. It's really important for college and careers to be able to collaborate on electronic documents. So if you want to up your digital literacy game, you could turn it into that, or you could just back away from that completely, print it out, and have them write it down in their own handwriting. But totally up to you. Or you could do all the things. You could have them write it and then copy it into a Google Doc. And they would have to do these same steps. Like if you made your own copy and shared it with them, they would need to make their own copy. So a lot of digital literacy skills could be learned, and you could turn this activity into something that you're doing for a solid month, if not more, because there's a lot of elements to it. But again, you get to choose, which elements do you want to highlight? Which dimensions do you want to really focus on? It's up to you. So let me stop sharing for a second and just get your ideas here. And yeah, if anybody wants to ask a question or make a comment, or what do you think about this worksheet and these two packets? Is this something you would use? How would it go in your classroom? What challenges do you foresee?
Right, so people can either use the chat or raise your electronic hand so we can ask you to unmute. With multiple screens, the old analog hand doesn't always work, because can't see
Yeah.
you're not on the right screen.
Does everybody know how to raise their, it's different now. It's like you go down to this heart and it says react. which
Yeah,
honestly, that's not intuitive for me. If I click that, I think I'm hearting something.
yeah, it
It's
took me a
hard- it's
week to
harding a
click on
verb.
it. It was
But
like,
you
I'm
do-
not
you
gonna,
have-
I don't want to do that.
Yeah, I don't want to heart that. No,
Okay.
but no, you have to click on the heart
Yeah,
and then you can raise your hand, right? Wait, where's the hand? Yeah, raise hand. Oh, that's another weird, non-intuitive thing.
Yeah.
It's- Anyway, so yeah,
So-
click on the heart if you want to raise your hand.
so Lynn just shared in the chat that these materials would be great for the ESL, GED, and career service programs.
Mhm.
Justin had said a similar thing about kind of pairing it with IET pathways.
Great, great. And what about, yeah, so well, let's hear more about in the ESOL classroom. Cheryl writes, the
notes that-
worksheet can be used as a prompt for discussion or writing activity and then expanded to resume development. Yeah, great.
I mean, I think that's one of the key things you said, Cynthia, I think it's not only the content, right, of identifying what you've done or what experiences you have, right, but the skill in getting it down, right, the language, getting it down, and being able to document it, right. That's part of the important part of the process as well. Sarah's got a comment.
Go ahead, Sarah.
I was just gonna say it, and I'm sorry if you've said this already, but it goes well with your checklist or the checklist, which is awesome. It's, long list of activities. So it helps people to identify their activities and then list them. And then it's an abstraction process. I'm reminded of Bloom's taxonomy, or, taking the concrete and generalizing it. I don't know if that's something that you've talked about as part of the activity, how to abstract, how to define the activity,
Mhm.
describe the activity, abstract.
Yeah. No, that's a really good observation. That's just, and it's great English language practice and a really good skill for I think college and careers, just being able to do that. Thank you. Kathy says you can curtail these sheets to any level. It is a great precursor to open up conversation and streams ideas. Yeah. Yeah. And also, what I find so appealing is it just makes the invisible visible. I feel like adult educators do a lot of invisible work too. Am I right? I know your job description says one thing, but really on the ground in front of the classroom with your students, you're using so many kind of invisible skills. And, it would be fun even just to take time to name some of those, just to kind of make those visible. But I feel like our students have a lot of these invisible skills. And when we shine a light on them, it's going to make them feel more powerful and more seen. And that's going to enhance their learning. They're going to feel more, more a sense of their own agency, I think. And we know that is one of the persistence drivers, right? Is when students feel a sense of their own agency, they persist. And so if they're coming into a classroom where, oh my gosh, I'm being so seen here, I want to come back. I want to keep coming for more of that, Any other comments or hands? Okay. Well, thank you. Let me go back to the slides. Okay, so you will get these slides and you'll get that link to the fillable PDF. Has anybody here ever had to fill out a fillable PDF? We have to do that in this life, right? Sometimes our students might have to do that. So that's another opportunity to practice using a digital tool. I think, well, I'm not going to say that. I was going to say, I think registering to vote and some things like that, you might need to fill out a fillable PDF, but I'm not sure about that in New Jersey, so I don't know. So I'll step back from that. Okay, so yeah, so remember I mentioned the 3 issues, and then I mentioned that there's 10 transferable skills. Here's how they are spread out over the 3 issues. And so you can go to issues 59, 60, or 61 and find content by students about how they adapted or showed flexibility, how they self-managed, how they respected differences. As I mentioned, there's a lot of overlap. So in any one of these stories, there's many transferable skills actually on display, but I had to kind of pick a category that I thought it went best in. So, but one of the activities you could do is name some other transferable skills that you see happening in this story. So go check out those issues. They're very, very rich and inspiring and wonderful. So if you want to start talking about transferable skills in the classroom, here's one way to do it. You could just ask students, tell me about a time when you noticed a problem, large or small, that needed to be solved, and you took the lead on solving it. And this would get some conversation going about leadership and initiative, this transferable skill. And it's really important to make sure you say large or small. It doesn't have to be, solved, some huge issue that we're facing as a society. It can be something like what we read about the mom who, figured out how to get resources for her autistic son. Or it could be the mom who figured out how to give healthy food for her kids. Or it could be something bigger like, the kitchen and the bathrooms at my workplace were never cleaned. And I got a bunch of my coworkers together and we talked to the boss and we got that figured out, so now they're clean. It could be something bigger, or it could be even bigger. We had a union drive. I helped organize a union drive at my workplace, or I helped organize people to register to vote. Any number of things. And then, you could read some articles from the Change Agent or anywhere else about people who have solved problems. So let's take the time to actually read this whole article. Okay, did you have a chance to get through for the most part? Does anybody want to say what stands out about the article, or what the big takeaways from the article?
Rishleen's already commented in the chat saying it's very inspiring and heartwarming.
It is heartwarming. What makes it heartwarming, Richleen? Do you want to say anything? Do you want to unmute and say anything?
Sure. Hi, everybody. The fact that she wouldn't let any obstacle get her down. She was advocating for her son. I liked, first of all, that she used the idiom red flags. That caught my attention first, that she knew that idiom. But that all of us who are mothers and fathers, maybe too, Eric, we would do anything when something's wrong for our kids, even take our hearts out if we could. And that's what makes it, to me, heartwarming, that she would let nothing stop her, and how she, in the end, feels like it's been a gift for her that she's been able to help her son and other parents as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. She recognized that there was a problem, and she didn't stop until she found help, says Lisa Lombardo-Klaus. And then Jen Samato says she learned to become an advocate. Yeah. And why is it called My Big Gift? Interesting title, right? Would that be something you would explore with your learners? Why is it called My Big Gift? They would be getting to think about inference,
Rishleen, you unmuted. Do you want to chime in on this?
Yeah, I did mention that when I finished speaking, that when we give of ourselves and we can help make the world a better place, that is a gift to us.
Mm-hmm. Right. And also, she says, actually explicitly, she says, I think that she found joy in the journey. And I gotta say, this is something I love about adult learner writing and adult learner perspective. And I just see this over and over again in the change agent writings, is that the learners hold what's hard and what's joyful at the same time. And they really are able to do that in this authentic way that does not pull punches. It's not rose-colored glasses. It's not, but it's like looking at the hardest things and then noticing where there's joy. I am so moved and humbled every time I read these stories. I go, this is a form of brilliance and genius, you know, to be able to do that. And again, I think that's something that our learners can do and have done. And I hope that, you know, when they see another student writing about it that way, it makes them feel like they can own their story. A great transferable skill, right? Being it, because we're going to face hard things in life, no matter what, you know, and if you can find joy in the journey of that, it's an emotional intelligence that's going to get you a long way. Yeah, and I kept, so speaking of vocabulary, somebody mentioned something about vocabulary. I'm always struggling with how, you know, which hard words to leave in and which hard words to edit out a little bit, because I have that opportunity, right? I can make sentences shorter, I can delete clauses, or, you know, I'm gonna make sentences less complex. But, you know, I just made a decision to keep a few things in there, like red flag. That's a great idiom to teach. And also, I think there's pediatric neurosurgeon or I just said, okay, I'm leaving that in, you know, because that is a chance to practice those multisyllabic words, which might feel like an obstacle. Like, I can't read this. It's got, that word has about 5 syllables in it. I can't read it. But actually, there's strategies for that. Like, one strategy is to skip it. You don't let it get in the way. Like, okay, I do not know what a pediatric neuro specialist is, but I'm going to skip it and just keep getting meaning from this story. And then I can go back and maybe I'll be able to figure out from the context, you know, something about what it is. But I try to be strategic about leaving some of those harder words in there, because I think, you know, again, the standards challenge us to challenge our students to higher and higher levels of complexity. So you have that opportunity if you want as a teacher. Any other takeaways from that? So a lot of transferable skills in that story, but, you know, I slotted it with leadership and initiative. So one point I want to make is that, you know, not just from the content that you're sharing, like i.e. the stories, you can also, we have plenty of classroom practices that help teach these skills as well. So in our classrooms, we can coach students to advocate for themselves in the classroom. They can set goals, and then they can try to be in charge of noting whether they're meeting their goals or not. And as much as you can transfer that agency to them and have it come on them, and not you saying, oh, you're not meeting your goal. You know, you said you wanted to do this, and you're not, as much as you can help them be the one to identify it and then say what they need help with, they are becoming leaders and agents of their own learning. You can try to set up peer mentoring in the classroom so that students get a chance to show their leadership. If somebody in your class is really good at math, or really good at fixing phones, or helping download apps, or log into the change agent, you know, they can be the one who goes around and helps other people do that. And now, you know, that is something, if they do that over a period of months, so that could go on a resume, with like a peer mentor in my adult ed classroom for you know, technology or something. You know, a program strategy is to have a student council or some kind of program-based leadership body. So if your programs have that already, you could encourage your students to be part of that, and they're getting to develop those leadership skills. And then the other thing I would just encourage is to be really transparent about why you're asking students to do these things. You know, if you ask students to set goals and then monitor their own goals, they might be cranky about that. They might, I don't want to do that, or why should I do that? But if you're transparent about why you're asking them to do that, then it will help them, be able to do it. Okay, so I know we don't have too much time, but I wanted to just tell you that I kind of went through these steps with 2 more transferable skills. And the second one is communication. And again, ask your students to talk about a time that they had to communicate about something and get them sharing those stories and collecting the vocabulary that they need to talk about that. And then here's an article from the change agent about somebody who worked in her adult ed campus to get a phys ed program brought to her campus, and all the things that she did and how she got out of her comfort zone to be able to advocate for this program to be brought to her campus, and used a lot of different communication skills, of course, also leadership and other skills, but I thought the communication skills were the most important to her success. And there's other stories on communication that you could grab. And then, oh, here's another story on communication. But then also, of course, we teach communication in the classroom. And so I'm just pinging these different things because I want you to be aware that the practices that we use in the classroom also can emphasize transferable skills, and not just emphasize them, but even be something that could go on a resume. So like if your students are in an ongoing way using online forums and chat rooms to do their homework, to communicate about homework, to communicate about a topic, to edit each other's writing, to offer feedback on each other's writing, anything, that could go on a resume as, experienced with online, forums for communication. Another transferable skill that I focused on here is teamwork and collaboration. And like a sentence, a question you can ask your students. And then an article by this great student who was undocumented at first and got picked up by ICE, in fact. And she had a small child at the time, and she was detained by ICE. And, what did she do? How did she manage the situation? And she talks about all the people in her life who supported her and helped her. And just having that perspective about, having a team. She had people on her team, even though there were a lot of pressures against her, a lot of really difficult challenges going against her. She identified a team. She wrote about them here. And I think that's a great exercise for a lot of our students, is like to think about who's on our side, who can we go to, where can we get support? So, and we of course can do that a lot in the classroom by having small groups, people working in projects, having rubrics so people can see how they're being graded, and that being able to work as a team and work in collaboration with others is one of the skills that you're looking for them to develop. Having students again, review their goal setting, and I think really importantly, giving feedback to the teacher. I've done this a lot in my classroom where I ask my students to give me feedback about how the class went. I try to tell them at the beginning what I think we're going to cover. And then I ask them at the end, how do you feel about it? Do you feel like we covered that adequately? Do you feel like you mastered that? And, of course, it is hard for students to give negative feedback to a teacher. And we had to go through many weeks of them saying, class was great, teacher. I loved class, teacher, but you have to build trust and community and get around to the point where they can give you actually authentic and constructive feedback. And I learned so much from my students about what they needed and about what worked for them. And it helped them feel in charge of their own learning. So that's an important form of teamwork and collaboration. So, I keep mentioning a resume, and I think we need a whole other workshop, honestly, on how to add transferable skills to a resume. But just a couple of quick bullet points here. One thing that's really important is you want to analyze the job description. And when you talk about your skills in your resume, you want to make sure the skills you write down in your resume align with the skills that are mentioned in the job description. And one reason why this is so important is because, a lot of our applications are done online these days, and there's these kind of algorithms and applicant tracking systems. Basically AI, reviews them and looks for keywords and phrases and just kind of filters out any of the ones that don't meet a certain criteria for how many keywords are in there. So you don't want your resume to get filtered out on that first go. You want to have your resume align with the job description. And then, just listing your major achievements or improvements on the job that help you exemplify your transferable skills, and being really specific about it and quantifiable is also an important thing to remember when you're trying to put your transferable skills on a resume. So I have some resources here that you'll have the links to when you get the copy of slides. You can check those out. I want to mention that, we publish a call for articles every February, and the deadline is in early May. So we just had a deadline, but I really hope that now that you all have access to the change agent, you can teach your students from this content and get them familiar with what the change agent's like. By the time the next call for articles rolls around, they'll have a sense of what the change agent's all about, and they might feel moved to try submitting something in the next round. I don't know what the theme is going to be yet, but there'll be a call for articles with a series of writing prompts, and students write, and then they send in their submission, and we convene an editorial board that looks at the submissions, and then a lot get rejected. So there's no guarantees, but a lot get accepted too. About 60 or 70 get accepted. So let me ask Kathy. We just have another minute or two left. Kathy, and maybe others here had their students submit writing. Do you want to say anything about that process, Kathy? Quickly, because we just have a minute or two. You're on mute, Kathy. You're on mute, Kathy.
There we go. I think the biggest thing was that I found that the biggest topic and the best topic is talking about yourself. And when you throw that out there and give the students the opportunity to talk about their own personal experiences and whatnot, it opens the doors and lets things flow. So as Cynthia said, a lot of times I have very low, my students are very low. So I would, have to bring it down. And the first part of the process was just getting them to talk and stream. And then later on, we worked, when we submitted articles, we worked then on the more, the pieces of editing and going over and ordering and sequencing and predicting what may happen in the future. So, but the biggest thing, and Cynthia is a big advocate in pushing this, is just getting them to bare their souls and talk with you. And again, they know about themselves, so they're more open to do that.
Thank you, Kathy. Yeah, definitely the pieces that are most compelling are the ones that are written from the heart. Yeah. And then sometimes you have to kind of push people to show more. You don't want to over push. People might not want to. That's fine. That's totally fine. But sometimes we just need to be asked, and then we want to share, but so breaking through that is something that we get to do with our writers. All right, well, I have about 1 minute left. So if anybody wants to just write a parting thought or raise their hand and say a parting thought, anything that you want to take away from this, or go ahead, Sarah.
In the meantime, I've dropped the link in for the PD certificate if folks need that. And then as a reminder from the top of the hour, we do, NJALL has got a bulk subscription so that folks here in New Jersey can access the change agent in your program and for your students. Yeah, Sarah?
Thanks. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, thanks. I just wanted to share, on Earth Day, I asked students to take a look at a website called regeneration.org. And I found out that at least 3 of my students from Central America have participated in planting trees, including Haynes in Honduras was organizing their workers to plant trees. So just to mention skills that you wouldn't know about unless, you happen to ask in some way. So
That's right. That's
just
right.
wanted to share that. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
And I think as someone pointed out, early on about one of the stories being drawn, right? That's another modality to get some of that stuff out. A student might not be able to say, well, I was involved in the reforestation project, but maybe they drew the fact that they were involved in a reforestation project, right? And then you can identify the vocabulary that they can use to talk about that experience. So we will make the slides available and then the video available. I certainly, encourage folks to have your students write to the change agent. And there's no conflict of interest. If your student wrote something for the New Jersey Association for Lifelong Learning annual learner writing contest, it's not proprietary. So your students can submit stuff to the change agent as well, and vice versa. The bigger the audience they have, the better.